To this video, we are going to see about ethanol production. Ethanol is an organic solvent with a chemical formula C2H6O. Ethanol is otherwise termed as ethyl alcohol or drinking alcohol. Ethanol is a volatile substance, which means easily evaporatable substance, and it also possesses a flammable nature. It's called as a psychoactive substance because it possesses principal active ingredient found in alcoholic drinks. Ethanol is naturally produced by fermentation process, or it was produced via chemical, that means petrochemical process. It's commonly consumed as a recreational drug. This ethanol also possesses some medical applications. They are also used as an antiseptic and disinfectant solution. In addition to it, this ethanol, though it's a chemical solvent, it's used for the synthesis of various organic components and also for many testing purposes. It's also used as an alternative fuel source. Ethanol production process. As a food for us, the microorganism requires food in the form of substrates. Various kinds of substrates are used for the ethanol fermentation process. Mainly, the substrate choice must be based on their regional availability and economic efficiency. So, there are a lot of substrate used. So, first thing is sucrose containing materials. Sucrose, which is a disaccharide molecule, possesses sugar units. The main thing for fermentation is sugar, because the sugar is converted into organic acid by means of some microorganism. So, sucrose-rich material is used for ethanol production. Sugarcane. So Brazil is the world's second biggest producer for ethanol, uses sugarcane as their substrate. Moreover, countries like Central America and Caribbean also use sugarcane as their substrate. In many European countries, sugar beet used for ethanol production. In addition to it, many starchy materials also employed for the production of ethanol, because starch, which is a polysaccharide molecule composed of many simple sugars. So for the usage of starch, it was done by means of certain process called saccharification. So in the saccharification process, the complex starchy material, the complex sugar material was first break down into simple sugar, and then the sugars was subjected to fermentation. Then in some countries, they also use corn as a substrate. Mainly in USA, the world's biggest corn producer uses corn as a major substrate for the production of ethanol. And at last, lignocellulosic biomass. So the example for lignocellulosic materials are like wheat husk, and then wheat burn, male silage, etc. These are considered to be a waste material, but due to the highly rich starch purpose, these materials are also used for the production of ethanol, and many investigation studies are undergoing for the usage of these lignocellulosic biomass. The microorganism used for the production of ethanol are these yeast as well as bacteria. So in yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae and Cuveromys fragilis are used. So both use starch and sugar as their substrate. And Candida pseudotropicals, it uses lactose as well as whey. Lactose is a disaccharide molecule which was present enormous in milk, as well as whey, which is a waste material obtained while cheese making. And bacteria, Zygomonas mobilis, which use starch as a substrate. Now we are going to see about production process. Mainly the ethanol production was done by two major methods. First one is dry milling and another one is wet milling. So while compared to wet milling, the dry milling had high amount of ethanol, and it was estimated that 2.8 gallons of ethanol was obtained per bushel of corn in dry milling. So here is the process. So first the corn was subjected to milling, that means crushing, and then it was converted into liquefaction process. Here after milling, it is a high amount of starchy materials. So as already said, starch is a polysaccharide, so which was composed of a long polysaccharide chains. So first, the breakdown of these polysaccharide chains into simple subunits takes place. This was done by means of alpha amylase enzyme, and then after the breakage of subunits, it was further converted into simple sugars. This process is called saccharification process, was done by means of glucoamylase enzyme, and then this simple sugar utilized by means of yeast, and then it converted into ethyl alcohol. So the yeast which consumed that glucose, and inside the glucose it was undergone by the pathway called glycolysis, and at the end product of glycolysis was ethanol, which was liberated outside the cell. So now the fermentation media contained ethanol. It was further obtained or further recovered for the further use. So in this dry milling, the fermentation solid sludge after the recovery of the ethanol was further subjected to centrifugation, drying process and evaporator process, and it was further undergone by liquefaction process to yield another set of or another subunits of some starchy materials to get more ethanol. The second major process is wet milling, and here the systematic picture representing the wet milling ethanol production. Compared to dry milling, it yields low amount of ethanol, but in addition to it, it also yields high amount of some valuable products. So here the corn, it was undergone by a process called steeping, that means soaking of corn in water, and then it was allowed to incubate for germ production, and after the germ production, the germ was separated and it was further subjected for oil refining and to yield corn oil, and then in side by side the grinding as well as screening process takes place, and from the grinding they separated starch and gluten from that substance, and after the starch get converted by means of saccharification process and then further subjected to fermentation process. So from the fermentation process they yield alcohol. So at the end of this fermentation process they yield corn oil, feed products, starches, sweetness, and some other alcohol and chemicals. It was not easy task to separate the ethanol from the fermentation media, because ethanol not only present in the fermentation media, in addition to that the yeast cells or the microbial cells also produce many byproducts. If we are using starch as a substrate, means we can get esters, organic acid and higher alcohols. If we are using lignin as a major substrate, means it also produce cyclic as well as heterocyclic components. And the production of ethanol was analyzed by means of the following spectroscopy, that means NIR and high performance chromatography, gas chromatography and mass spectroscopy. And then purification technique. The purification technique was done by means of distillation process, adsorption process and ozonization and gas stripping. Distillation, in many industries the distillation process is a major thing for the separation of ethanol, and mainly for the volatile substance the distillation process is used. Based upon their low as well as high boiling point, the volatile substance gets separated. And adsorption process, the usage of adsorbents are used, and the usage of adsorbents is based upon their chemical as well as physical property of fermentation product. And then ozonization. Ozone is a triatomic molecule which is also used for the separation of volatile substance from the fermentation media. Although ozonization of ethanol could be expected with oxidation, it does not happen under the atmospheric condition. Thus, ozone can remove impurities without any significant damage on ethanol. Last one is gas stripping. It's a recent technique used for separation of different volatile substance. And these are the purification process of ethanol. Thank you.